All right, welcome back, and we've got a wonderful special guest with us today, Pastor Sue Lingerfelt. And first of all, let's kind of introduce who you are and your experience.
Okay.
Because I know you're a mother, a grandmother.
Yes.
And you're educated.
Yes. So, and I'm not ashamed to say, I was born in 1955. So I basically grew up as a child during the 60s. Mm-hmm. And all the changes that were going on in the 60s during that cultural time, I went to college in the 70s, got married in the 70s, got my degree. I have a degree in education with a minor in child psychology. And I've taught school. I taught pre-K, kindergarten, first grade. I've supervised all the elementary grades. I've raised 2 children, a son and a daughter. They're both happily married, well-educated, happily married. They have children of their own. I'm a grandmother of 7.
Yes.
And so when we're all together, it's wild. It's party time. And so I have seen kind of the cultural transition from the late 60s through the 70s, all the cultural revolution stuff that was happening then, the 80s. We started our married life in 1976, and then had our son in 1982, our daughter in 1984. So they grew up in the 80s, the 90s, and then they got their degrees. Our son has an earned doctorate, a doctorate of ministry, a DMin. He has 2 master's degrees. Our daughter has her bachelor's degree and education and also child psychology. She teaches classes online for Evangel University. And I love the way she says things, because she says things, that just seem to cut right through. She has her father's gifting.
Right.
But I, as a mom, as a grandmother, as a pastor's wife, I am seeing some things come full circle now with all the benefits, but also the detriments of all the technology in our society.
Right.
Because, of course, growing up in the 60s and then even in through the 70s, we didn't have technology until we were married in the 1980s, and the first cell phones were huge.
Yes.
And my husband, when he was working on his doctorate, had to write his paper on a typewriter.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Click, click, click all night long.
It's very loud.
And at the kitchen table. So, we have all the benefits now of technology to make our lives easier. And I have to say, I'm as guilty as everyone else, because my iPhone has all these game apps for my grandchildren. So if they're with me in the car, usually the youngest ones who fuss the most get the phone to play some little preschool games on them. iPads, with child-appropriate games and things. But thinking about all of this that we have at our disposal now to entertain our children and keep them happy has resulted, I think, in a lot less interaction between parent and child, a lot less interaction even between siblings.
Right.
It has resulted in a lot less face-to-face communication, talking to people in general.
Right.
And so then we see it become exponential as they go into their teen years.
Sure.
And they're really, I think, awkward, some more than others, because some parents do a great job in making their children connect with others through school, through sports, through music lessons, through other things, not just, but still there's just too much, I think, I see, of awkwardness, especially you see it more in the teen years, junior high, high school,
right,
and the teen years, and even going into college, where kids don't really know how to communicate. They don't know how to talk.
Right.
And they don't even know really how to like address each other or address other adults. And I think that is really becoming a big problem in the workforce and people hiring. And we see it more now than ever before in the service industry. It's
sure.
Yeah, it's become like we've created an awkward culture,
Right.
so to speak.
Right. Now, you left one thing out.
Okay.
That you and your husband pioneered a Christian school that'll be celebrating 35 years
Sure,
next
yeah.
year.
We did. And that was when our son was going into the first grade. And actually, I have a funny story about that because he was born, as I said, in 1982, and then in the and that very year, he was born in March of 1982, and it was just, I don't know, barely 60 days after he was born. My husband got an invitation from a missionary to go spend a year as a missionary instructor at a Bible college in Kenya. And I thought, well, we have a brand new baby. How are we going to even do this? But long story short, we did. And it was a great experience for a lot of ways. But in connection to what we're talking about this morning about parenting, talk about having to parent old school, a newborn in Africa.
Right.
I mean, I had to go to cloth diapers.
Right.
Because at the time, Kenya had an embargo against it. And so they were not, the drugstores didn't have any disposables for purchase unless it was under the counter black market.
Wow.
So you might pay for a little pack of 12 diapers, you might pay like the equivalent, oh gosh, I've forgotten exactly, but like 5 times the money.
Oh man.
Like if back then in 1982, a little pack of diapers like that was, say, $4, it would be more like 15 or close to 20.
Wow.
So like gold.
Right.
But so cloth diapers, washing a lot of things by hand, hanging laundry up outside, trying to figure out what to cook and what to buy to eat to cook. And so real like grassroots parenting with a newborn in a foreign country.
And a new mom.
And a new mom, and then not having my mom there.
Sure.
And because there was no cell phones. So no computers. So about once a month, we would I would call my parents, call his parents, and then if we needed something and I would say, Mom, can you please send this and this? Well, it took us 3 months to find out because when it took 3 months for the first care packages to arrive with like disposable diapers or socks for our baby or shoes or this, we realized they didn't know that you had to really pay for air on those packages because otherwise it would like go slow boat
on a ship.
And it would take like 12 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
Plus when the Nairobi airport would get the packages, they would hold on to them for customs inspection. Open them up, look through them, see if there was anything they wanted to keep.
Right.
And so I'm saying all that, which may seem unrelated, but it's really not. There's challenges to parenting, no matter when you're parenting, what decade you're parenting in, where you're parenting.
Right.
And I see the parents today, even with all of our blessings of technology and modern conveniences, having dishwashers, having garbage disposals, having a nice big fridge and freezer and a washer and dryer. A washer and dryer. I mean, I would give up my stove before I gave up my washer and dryer because I could cook over a fireplace or a pit.
Oh my goodness.
If I needed to.
Right.
But hand washing everybody's clothes, let me tell you right now, it's not like going to give you those beautiful hands.
Right.
So as a parent, I mean, I would give up every appliance I have, but never the washer and dryer.
Right.
So we have all these blessings to make our lives easier. But I think in the course now of having all this technology and all these modern conveniences and making our lives easier, having more time, we're not really spending time with each other.
Sure.
Like parents talking with their kids, playing, board games,
Right.
after dinner,
Right.
having, time where we read. I know this may, be appalling to people to hear me talk like this, but I'm seeing kids that are, I don't want to say troubled, but I think like there's no rest. There's no peace in their souls. There's no
Sure.
peace in their minds and their hearts. They're like wired. They're like, it's like they've had too many coffees, but they haven't been drinking coffee.
Right.
They're
Right.
just too, and then they don't know how to talk to people.
Right.
Sometimes as pastoring, you brought that up, yes. We started a Christian school, and so as pastors, we have a wonderful Christian school. It's the I always say it this way: if the church is our child, the school is our grandchild.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's because it's the lifeblood of the church, the children, the next generation. And but these children, they have to have personal connection time with parents, their siblings, the people they live with, and they have to, they learn how to interact at home.
Right.
Don't think, well, as long as they're watching something or they're on their computer or they're occupied, they're happy, so I can do what I need to do, then I'm going to send them to school. They'll get all the interaction they need. Well, but they really learn how to interact with, a man by interacting with their dad, and with a woman by interacting with their mom, and then with other kids by interacting with their siblings if they have siblings.
Right.
And it's so important that it takes place in the home, because it's like when we as parents think, well, if I have my child in a Christian school all week long, and then I bring them to church on Sunday, and then when they're a teen, they're in youth service, that, my job's done. I don't have to. But you know what? Children are going to really learn at home from mom and dad about who God is,
Right.
loving God,
Right.
and how to connect with God and how to hear his voice by hearing mom and dad talk at home with each other, with the children, about God and who God is, and by reading the word out loud.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like, I'm not talking about making everybody miserable. It could be like, a routine where maybe after dinner, we just read one chapter, and we kind of go through the Bible together, read a chapter, and then talk about, well, what's he saying here?
Right.
What could this mean to us?
Right.
Or maybe like before the meal, just reading a short passage and praying over the
Right.
meal, and then during the meal talking about it.
Sure.
And what we used to do when Austin and Christina were growing up in the home, my husband would go upstairs. He'd go upstairs with the Bible, and he'd sit on one of their bed. They, lay on their beds together, and he'd sit there on the bed, and he'd read to them and talk to them about what he read, and then he'd pray over them, and then scoot them off to bed. And that was their time. And that was, it worked for us.
Sure.
Because he's busy, and he doesn't like to stop what he's doing until he's ready to stop, which was for us when they were growing up at the end of the day. So bedtime, at that point in the evening, he was ready to call it a day.
Right.
And so he could give them that focus, that time.
Right.
So everybody in their home has to work this out for themselves.
Right. Yeah, because I found sometimes that like questions around dinner table are like biblical questions,
Right.
to where the because kids are curious
and they have
all
questions.
kinds of questions.
Absolutely.
Answering those questions, or even bringing up some questions,
Right.
on how, especially with teenagers,
Right.
as they start developing their own faith,
Right.
about what, okay, what do y'all think about this?
Right.
How would you answer this question?
Right.
To kind of get them prepared and stronger.
Right.
So I'm hearing some old school principles for the new For the new age.
It's old, but it's new.
Right.
Because I think if we start implementing, I was talking to a young mom just this morning about summer. We're just headed into summer now, this next week. And I said about allowing children, to have those lazy days of summer.
Right.
Where there's nothing to do, there's no plan, there's nowhere to go.
Right.
And I don't get horrified, because I know moms feel like that a lot of times now that the kids have to, have a schedule of activities.
Right.
They have to be kept busy.
Right.
But if they've just come through a school year where they have been busy for 9 long months, and I know now with sports and all the activities and all the after school stuff, and my gosh, just keeping up with birthday parties and all that, it's like nobody's hardly had a break,
Right.
barely a free weekend
Right.
for 9 months. It's really healthy, I think, for kids to get bored
Sure.
and to be just like relaxed, to
Yes.
relax mentally.
Right.
And to do that, we have to really be not wired up.
Right.
And that means, no technology. Now,
Right.
and I'm not talking about punishment here. I'm talking about blessing. And I'm thinking about blessing myself too this summer, and telling everybody, if you want to see me and talk to me, see me at church, because I'm not going to be online
Right.
for the next 3 months.
Right.
Because I think, the Bible talks about how God is that still small voice. Well, he speaks to us, but that still small voice, in order to be heard, we have to be quiet. We have to
Right.
get quiet.
Right.
And a lot of times that means not just stopping what we're doing, because I've learned God can speak to me when I'm driving a car, when I'm working, when I'm talking to other people, but he needs my mind to get quiet.
Right.
My soul to get quiet.
That meditation. Yeah.
Yes, and so to do that, when we're constantly looking at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, emails, I mean, I really hate it, and I've got to find a solution. I don't have an alarm clock anymore. I use my phone as an alarm clock, which
Right.
is not really good, because the first thing that happens in the morning when I pick up my phone to turn off the alarm is the most recent ridiculous, horrifying
Right.
Twitter thing that has
Right.
happened overnight pops up. It's the first words I see every morning are some horrendous thing that somebody has said or done,
Or a Facebook
or crime,
comment,
or
or
a Facebook
some...
comment. I don't want to see that before I even see Jesus or
Right.
talk to the Lord
Right.
in the morning. And I think that's what our lives have become. And I know personally, 2020, the first few months of 2020, when all the horrible lockdowns and all that happened, and then there was all this news, that news, this news, and it was just so much, and it was so much for me. I mean, I have to admit, I outwardly was fine. I pretended. But inwardly, I did not handle it well. I didn't handle it well. And, I sensed in me, this not like an anxiety. And I see this in the kids today.
Yes.
I see like there's this anxiety.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, and I know there's all kinds of terms for it. The Germans say Angst, and but I am no Freudian psychologist. I believe in what the Word of God has to say about our souls and our spirit, and He speaks peace to us. But in order for us to maintain that peace, whether we're adults or whether we're children, is to, as the Word says, keep our minds stayed on Him.
Right.
And in order to do that, the focus of my mental attention has to be more on His Word than anything else.
Right.
And that goes back to the home.
Right. We have to teach that to our kids.
Yes.
Train them. In how to do that. It seems to me that because the world, especially American society, is not living for the Lord at all.
No.
That they've made all these other things idols.
Right.
Sports, music, you name it. And so they fill their time.
Because
they're not going to church.
No.
They're not reading their Bible. So they're busy. And then us Christians can get caught up
in all
that whole world. Like my kids have to do this because that
so
kid's
they're
doing
successful.
This.
Right.
But that's not what we're supposed to trust. That's not how we're supposed to train up our kids.
No, it's not at all. And it's producing, I think, a whole generation of children who should, like I said, be enjoying those lazy days of summer and be relaxed. Kids,
Right.
that's what makes childhood and children so wonderful.
Right.
Is, they're like relaxed.
Yes.
They're like,
Not a care.
They're not a care. That's why at the end of a long day, like when we have Wednesday night services, and we've, everybody's been up since like 6 a.m. with a long day of school. And then we have evening church, and they're up in their children's classes. They come down and they're like running around the place, and I'm thinking, where do they get all this energy?
Right.
And you think, well, it's because they have like young metabolisms, but I think it's more than that. I think it's because their souls, their minds, their hearts have been at ease. They're not
Right.
filled with a lot of junk that's like, weighing them down and making
Right.
them burdened and anxious. But that is now what I'm seeing, though, in these older children or young teens.
Yeah, right.
I'm seeing that there's, I see teens, and sometimes, I cheat. And when my husband's preaching, I look around and I look at people's faces.
Sure.
And it's okay, I think, when I look at adults' faces and they look like, you don't know, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they mad? Are they
Right.
just tired after a long day? But then when I look at that young people or teens' faces, and I see that they're not relaxed. They're like, holding on to stuff.
Right.
Like carrying water that wasn't meant for them to carry.
Exactly.
They're burdened, and
Yes.
they're anxious in their souls, and there's a solution. But I think we have to be willing to see it and address it and then deal with it. And then mom and dads, I think the truth of the matter is we're going to have to set the example.
Right. Right.
We're going to have to be willing to say, you know what? My phone is not at the dinner table.
Right.
And if I hear it, no matter what has happened, I can look at that in 20 minutes when
Right.
dinner's over, after
Right.
we've had our meal and we're done talking.
Right.
Because let's face it, if someone has died, looking at the phone 20 minutes sooner is not going to change that
Not going
fact.
to change a thing, right?
No.
Right.
And so we have to, set the example and
Right.
say, and I have attempted, at the request of, I have to say, my daughter and daughter-in-law, is when my grandkids are with me, we do things, but they don't look at my phone.
Right.
To play the games that I have.
Right.
And they're all good, color by number, preschool games and stuff. But that it's grandma time. So we should play games, we should go outside. We can even watch, their favorite kiddie movie together that their parents don't want to see for the gazillionth time.
Right.
And then talk and just have that relaxing do nothing time.
Right.
It's not about, keeping them occupied.
Right. I tell my son, I'm not your cruise director. I don't have to have every single minute.
Right.
Because I
Plan.
remember as a kid,
Right.
I would play imaginary football games in the front yard. I would do imaginary baseball. I mean, you're right about the lazy days of summer. I mean,
Right.
we would have to find something.
Find something to do.
And we didn't have all the technology.
No.
So we'd have to make it up.
Right.
Which
right.
helps your mind
Which,
and it helps
which
you.
helps.
Yes.
We did crazy stuff. Actually, I think my brother really did the crazy stuff, my younger brother, because he would get, innovative. And I remember he would pick the vegetables out of my mom's garden, put it in his wagon and go door to door and sell it to the neighbors.
Right.
Until my mom got the phone call, hey, did you know little Georgie was selling tomatoes? And my mom said, no, I didn't know that. Thank you. We would do stuff, and I remember we would set up in the driveway and play school. Of course, I'm being the oldest, I had to be the teacher.
Sure.
Then the neighborhood kids would come down, and then I'd have them seated on the concrete, and I
Right.
had my little chalkboard there, and I was
Oh,
the
yes.
teacher. So apparently I started early
Right.
on, as my husband say, wanting to tell people what to do. But that's okay, because kids, we were creative. We took what we had, which let me tell you, in the 60s, our closets were small in those old homes.
Right.
And except for the stuff in the basement,
Right.
space was so limited. I mean, our toys could have filled just one small trash bag.
Right.
I mean, we did not have like what kids have today.
Right. Right.
And I say that, myself included, So we have done so much to keep our kids entertained, when I think really what they needed was just downtime with us, with mom and dad, and with each other, and with just being relaxed, just doing nothing. Boredom is good.
Yes.
Boredom is good. I think we have somehow, I don't know when it happened or how it happened, or it was just an accumulation of all the fast-paced technology coming on the scene, and then going to more than 3 TV channels.
Right. Right.
But we have gotten just so crazy connected to technology that we are no longer connected with each other.
Yeah, and seeing what other people are doing,
Right.
which is great for them.
Right.
But what does that have to do with me?
Exactly. Exactly. And, it's just, they're saying that all of that for young girls, teen girls especially, and I'm sure boys too, looking at all that and what people are doing, going around the world in 60 days or whatever.
Right.
I mean, everything that, that's causing depression.
Right.
And, adolescent children. This is ridiculous.
Right.
They shouldn't, so it's time. I think it's time for us, and I understand if a teen is driving, they should have a phone where they could call mom or dad in case of an emergency, but they don't really need a computer to do that. They just need a phone that'll make phone calls.
Right, right.
For safety's sake.
A phone.
A phone that makes phone calls.
Right.
And again, and because of the timeline for the advancement and development of technology, of course, we had it easier as parents, my generation, because like I said, we got married, we had no cell phones yet, didn't have personal computers, we used typewriters, we used landlines, and we never thought about it. We never thought, if I'm going to run errands, I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to do a road trip. And what's going to happen if the car breaks down or I have an emergency? We never had these thoughts. I mean, if you think, well, I'll find a gas station or a good Samaritan will come by and change my tire.
Right.
Or, call 911 for me. Or
we
never had these anxious thoughts.
That's so true.
That, my God, what would happen if I'm driving the car and I can't call you or Adrian, I can't call my husband or my son to help me.
That is so true.
And when you start to think about it that way, it's like we have now all this built-in anxiety.
Just fear.
Fear,
yeah.
Which we don't like to call it that, but it really is.
Right.
That that we can't make a move outside our front door if I don't have my cell phone with me.
Right. Right.
This is crazy, and I can say it's crazy because we were married, and then our kids, they went through elementary school, they went through high school, and it was really not until they were driving and in high school they got a phone. But back then, the phones were not computers.
No.
All they would do is make a phone call. You couldn't text, you couldn't email.
Text cost money.
Text cost money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it wasn't until they were in college that then they had a phone that we could text, which we thought it was wonderful because then, because as a parent, I always thought, if I call them, I might be interrupting, a class or, they might be driving. I don't want to do that. But then I thought, I can text.
Right.
And that way they can just answer me when they want to.
Right.
So, which, I learned later they considered that an inconvenience as well, but I didn't care.
Right, that doesn't matter.
Who's paying for the cell phone?
That's right. That's a whole different subject, right?
Exactly.
So what would you say to parents? Because I know our society now, it's very difficult for two parents home for only one of them working. So both parents are working full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so they say, I hear you, Pastor Sue, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just so doggone tired.
Right.
When I get home, what is some ways or something that you would encourage them from that aspect?
I get it. And I get being tired and doing what's simple. And but I think, like I said, part of our tiredness is just not due to working all day. I think part of our tiredness is even when we're working or not working, we're still looking at the news around the world.
Right.
And what everybody is saying about everything and everybody.
Right.
And we've got everybody, texting us or emailing us on everything that they see what's happening around the world, and everybody's saying what everybody.
Right.
And I think that's part of our tiredness.
That adds to it.
So I think then getting home we're home. The work day is ended. It's like when and I heard in a marriage seminar once the advice for not bringing your burdens from work home into your marriage or in your family time was to write them on a piece of paper, what was troubling you from work, what you were burdened down by, and then taking it and just crumbling it up and throwing it out the window of the car before you got home, because God's going to take care of that. I'm home now. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to just enjoy my family time.
Home is for the family.
It's for the family. It's rest time. So part of that rest, I think, is getting our family to do things together, like, help get dinner on the table, help put the dishes in the dishwasher, help, get the little ones in the bathtub, get help, and then sit down and have just a reading time, a watching time with, maybe a special movie that people would actually benefit from, or a historical thing or something, just, and not every night though, but to have that time where we're home now, the burden of the day is behind us. We can handle stuff at work tomorrow. We can handle what's bothering us tomorrow. Because now I think a lot of times what I am seeing in kids as well as parents is what's bothering us usually is not even real stuff that like a real problem at work to solve. It's more like problems that have been brought to us by other people because they have issues with stuff that's going on in other people's lives. So it's like third party stuff. And like we're trying to solve problems for somebody else. That's not even in our home. And the Bible says we can pray for one another, and we ought to pray for one another without ceasing. So if we know if somebody is burdened by a situation or a difficulty in their family, their home, their job, their life, we should pray for them. But that doesn't mean we're supposed to talk about it, email about it, text about it, do Facebook or, Twitter about it. We just have to learn that, God's got a better way for us. And it's okay to calm it down. And I'm saying that while I'm drinking more coffee, but to calm it down.
So good,
And calm our lives down. And say, okay, it's like when the phone rang at our house in the 1960s, and we had this little kitchen, the table, the chairs, the phone on the wall was like right behind where my dad sat. And the phone would ring, my dad would pick it up and go, hello. And he'd say, we're eating dinner. Call back later. Click. And then I'm like, I'm a teenager. I'm horrified. I'm thinking, I know that was someone from me. And he just answered the phone like an ogre. And, who's going to want to call me back later when, they heard that gruff voice and call back later. And, and then I was looking at my brother, he was looking at me, and he hardly ever got phone calls because he was the boy. And so I was just horrified. Well, 9 times out of 10, it was from my mother. And, that's just the way it was at our house. So, but there was other than that, there was never an interruption at dinner. Ever. Not ever. Nobody ever heard ding, and they look
Everybody
at their phone,
looks at their phone.
And I'm just now seeing how bad this has been, not just for parents with young children or teens, but it's been bad for me. It's been bad for me. And I haven't had that complete focus, not just in my heart, but in my mind, to hear his voice, the Holy Spirit, giving me word, direction, the answer to what I'm dealing with or wanting to help someone with. And our answer is not in technology.
No.
And for our kids, it's definitely not in technology.
No.
And I understand they're going to use it. And they'll need to use it for school some. They'll need to have a computer and that. But look, we can't say enough about the safe use of electronics. And that there needs to be a shut-off time, and all the electronics need to be with mom and dad's in a central place in the house that nobody gets to till the next day.
Absolutely. That's great. Very good. And if you have, because I've got more questions, but
Sure. No, we got time.
Okay,
If you've got time,
I've got
we've got
time.
time.
Because you mentioned spending time with your kids. Mm-hmm. So I just want to kind of ask you one more question about, because you got to grow up with your kids. Things have to change.
Yeah.
So what worked for you connecting with your second grader
Yes.
might not work with you connecting with your ninth grader.
Right.
So what are some things that you did with Austin and Christina in their teenage years to really have that time to where you were able to connect with them like you were when they were, because when they're little kids, they look up to you.
Yeah.
You're their world.
Yes.
And I've learned this now as a parent of college kids.
Yes.
You go from your kids needing you for everything as babies all the way to now where they're like, okay, I'm not sure I really need you so much anymore. And it's this whole transition.
It is.
So how did you connect with your teenagers over when they were grade school?
So as they go from adolescence into those teen years, my husband and I, and we weren't religious about it, but we tried to do things often enough. One-on-one time with me and our daughter as she was going through the teen years, doing things that girls like to do. Go get your nails done together. Go shopping together. Go see, a good chick flick that your dad and brother would not want to see together, and then talk about it. Go eat at places only she wants to eat, that nobody else in the family wants to eat. So she and I would do things like that, and then her dad would take her out to dinner to a nice place on a date night or a date lunch on a Saturday, and just treat her like it was a date, so she would know what to expect from a young man when she started dating.
Right.
And if he didn't treat her, he would say this to her, our daughter. He'd say, Christina, if a guy on a date doesn't treat you at least as well as your dad does, you don't need him.
Right.
And then with our son, it was more, dad doing stuff with him that they like to do at our house. Pretty much growing up, Saturday was Western Day. And so, because my husband thought Westerns are harmless, there's a moral.
Right.
The bad guy usually gets it in the end.
Right.
The hero wins. He gets the girl.
Right.
Everything's good. And you can learn moral values from some of those good old movies.
Right.
And so he and pretty much Austin would spend Saturday afternoons watching Westerns, and then, shouting down their lunch orders downstairs for me. And, spending time like that together. And then he would do there were those times he would do special things with our kids. So I want to say something. We spend a lot of money now on technology. But you can mark your child's life by, instead of getting them the newest, latest, greatest iPhone, just letting them be satisfied with, because guess what? Dad's going to take you on a road trip, and you're going to go to this car factory and see how these cars are made. Or he's going to take you here. Or like with our daughter, when she turned 16, I said, you need to do something special with her, but he already had it covered mentally. So he wanted her at the time to learn how to golf. So he arranged a trip, just the two of them. I think it was 5 days, maybe 6 or so. And he took her to, I believe it was, the Westin Rancho Mirage, which is in Palm Desert, California. And he had lined them up a lesson with the golf pro for her, and Dad was there along. And she got professional golf lessons, and then they golfed together. And it was so great. It was so great. And of course, she never really did learn how to golf or become a golfer, but that wasn't really the point.
Right.
It was about that one-on-one time. And then he said, okay, then that was one day they had all the golf stuff and then played golf the next day. But then the next day he said, I'll take you shopping in the Palm Desert on that famous street where all the shops are, and you can buy whatever you want for your birthday. And he laughed about it because he said she was so easy on me. He said the stores she went into were not the stores I would want to go into, but she got all this girl clothes, and he said, I don't think the whole shopping extravaganza cost more than $600.
Right.
And so he said, but it marked her.
Right.
You know, that trip marked her, and
Right.
just dad and daughter.
Right.
You know, eating, you know, and then going shopping,
Right.
doing the golf. So, and then with our son, like I said, he did the car trips and things. And so, you know, you just have to plan, I think, some special things that you do with your son, with your daughter, for mom to do with them, for dad to do with them, that's special to them. You know, one of the things we have at our church we've been doing is a girls' getaway. It's like every 2 or 3 years, just depends on prices and what's going on.
Right.
But, you know, I think it's so wonderful because it's for moms and their daughters. Girls have to be 13 or 14 on up. But, you know, if more of the moms, I think, would use that, because it's like, we don't do it every year, so it's rare, but to use that time to bring their daughter and just to have that mom and daughter time,
Right.
and to use it. And I know moms want a break. I do. And God bless my daughter-in-law, because my son and daughter-in-law have 5 children, and they're all
Right.
under 12.
Right.
God bless them. And
Right.
I understand she really needs a break.
Right.
I mean, literally, she needs a break so bad that if I had to stay home to watch her kids so she could go on the girls' getaway without me, I would do
Right.
it, because she really needs a break.
Right.
And I keep offering, go away for a night. I'll come over. I'll be alive the next day, and the kids will be alive. But, you know, I know, because everything's so busy. There's so many commitments. They don't want to do it to me or do it to themselves. I don't know. But we have to just make time and spend money where it's really going to make a memory.
Right.
Don't just go to the Apple store and buy the latest, greatest and hand them the latest, greatest gadget to occupy their time. Instead, say, you know what? Instead of spending $1,500 on this,
Right.
I'm going to take you on a trip. And we're gonna go here and stay at this great place and go there, and like whatever, you know, would just really wow them, whether it's the shopping or just being at the pool or the beach or
Right.
whatever it is, or going to look at the cars and the factory, and
Right.
you know, making memories that frankly they're unrepeatable,
Right.
and then you have a connection.
Right.
And
Right.
and during that time, not be like trying to talk to a gazillion other people around the
Right.
world or at work or anything.
Right. So invest in your kids.
Invest in your kids, time well spent with you.
Right. Right.
And as a family.
Right.
Family time together.
Right. That's really good.
It's so important.
Right.
It's so important.
Yeah, and I learned that from you and Pastor as well. And so as my kids were growing up, I would take them on trips here and there, and that's some of my fondest memories.
Yeah.
And it's some of the stuff that we talk about the most.
Right.
You know, for the St. Paul's, for our school,
Right.
one of the biggest things I think is the senior trip. We take them for a trip right before they graduate, and that's what they always talk about.
Right.
They don't
Right.
necessarily talk about they're talking about the senior trip, you know,
Right.
about what happened.
What happened, yeah.
That time with each other.
Right.
And that's
Right.
so good that we're spending money in all these other places.
Right.
But we have to be very purposeful on spending money and investing in our
in
kids.
time spent together, doing
Yes.
something. You know, we took our kids, we thought this will be great. Because my husband and I had done road trips for just our time away. Some, as our kids were older, in the older elementary and junior high and high school years, we'd bring my mom in to stay with them, make sure they ate and went to school and did homework and all that. And so we were doing all these road trips then for time away. But then my husband thought, let's take the kids to the Grand Canyon. Let's take a car. And, you know, he wanted to cut down some of the driving. And so he had a car. He bought actually a Jeep for that trip, but he had, instead of having it brought to our house, he had them deliver the Jeep to Bozeman, Montana. So we would start our trip in Bozeman, Montana,
And drive
in
down.
this new Jeep, and drive all the way down to the Grand Canyon. So what a wonderful trip, but what a hoot, because, you know, we've got, oh my gosh, our kids, you know, teens don't like to walk. That's
Right.
one thing I learned. And then the second thing was teens like to eat in the car. Well, my
Yes.
husband had a new car. God help our teens, because, first stop outside of Bozeman was at a gas station. And of course, because we flew that morning, they were already hungry for lunch, even though it was 10:30 or 11.
Sure.
And so I let them get chips and drinks. So we get in the car, we're driving along, bags open up of, the chips that like smell the most, which I don't know if that's Doritos or what.
Right, Cool Ranch.
And my husband's like, "What's that I smell?" And he literally pulls over to the side of the road, opens and grabs the chips, and he said, "We can't make this car stink. It's going to lose its new car smell." Oh, those poor kids. So we go all the way down to Flagstaff. It's
Oh, my
like
goodness.
midday.
Yes.
And they haven't eaten, and gosh, long story short, we survived.
Right.
But it was such a great trip, and he tried to make it so great for them. And we stayed at like the old lodge at the Grand Canyon, the El Tovar.
Yeah.
And it was back in those days. It was great because you could get into those places. It wasn't super crowded.
Right.
But this is literally what happened. So we get there, we get to the old El Tovar, we check in, we had booked dinner. If you booked dinner, like as the sun was going down at 6 p.m., they put you at tables where you could see the sun going down
it's
over the Grand
unbelievable.
Canyon.
Yes.
And we eat a nice dinner, we sleep, and then the next morning, like my daughter's saying, "Why are the bathrooms so small? The bathtub is like falling apart." I said, "Honey, this is like original."
Yes.
And I said, "It's really old." She goes, "I know. Why are we here?" And then we drive out to the one of the lookout stops over the Grand Canyon. Get out of the car. They literally we're all four standing there looking out at this God created unreal vista.
Yes.
And they literally look over the edge. They look at each other. They look at us, and they literally say to their dad, "What are we going to do now?" They were done. They were done. And that was it. He said, "That's it. I will never bring these people back to the Grand Canyon."
Oh, my gosh.
But then, what was so funny? Years later, like when they were in college, and I don't remember if it was our son or daughter, said, "When are we going to go back to the Grand Canyon?" So you know what? Even though we thought it was a semi-disaster, and we were forcing them to have fun looking and walking around the whole rim of the canyon, that they looked back at it as a great memory.
Right.
And they wanted to do it again. Although I doubt they will never do that with my husband again, but God willing. And so... But they look back favorably.
Right.
Even though at the time we thought, man, that this is not ringing their bells.
Right.
We should have just gone to the beach.
Right.
But no, it made a memory that later they wanted to do again.
Right. Right.
And so that's the thing, I think, to invest in ways where we're just spending time together and making memories that can't be made by looking at a screen.
Right. Right. That's so good. That's awesome. If you have a certain subject or, I don't know, something that you have that you'd like to hear Pastor Sue's advice on it, please let us know. Either email us or let us know in the comments section. And thank you so much, Pastor Sue, for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's been fun.